I am a 73-year-old Anglo-Australian man who has been arguing against religion for over 60 years. Before I go any further, I have a confession to make. This is not my voice. It is an AI voice that I use because, if I speak for too long, my voice gets hoarse. However, nothing I have to say in any of my videos is generated using AI. I will always defend a person's right to believe whatever they choose to believe, even if I consider it to be nonsense, but I will not tolerate a religious person demanding that I live my life according to their religious beliefs. Nor will I tolerate religious people legislating their beliefs to force others to conform. While I respect a person's right to have faith, I do not respect faith in the biblical sense. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. In other words, you must believe something despite there being no worthwhile independently verifiable evidence to back it up. Other than my father, the most influential person in my life was my English teacher, Mr. Blackwell. He fostered in me a love of the English language. He taught me the value of critical thinking, that I should be skeptical of claims offered without evidence, and that I should never accept anything as true just because a person in authority, including himself, said something. Growing up in North Wales, I was enrolled at Grove Park Grammar School in Wrexham, where I received a classical education. In addition to English, we were taught Latin, Greek, history, mathematics, and science. We didn't study science in the general sense. Instead, we studied physics, chemistry, biology, and earth science, each of which was taught by teachers who specialized in the topic. We also had to attend classes called religious instruction. Our teacher was a Church of England minister who taught us about the Bible, but he also brought in guests who were clerics from other Christian denominations and other religions. I am certain that, in his mind, we would hear those other speakers and conclude that the Church of England was the true belief system. Boy, was he wrong! We read the Bible from the beginning to the end. As I was reading it, I applied the critical thinking skills Mr. Blackwell was teaching us, and, by the time I reached the book of Deuteronomy, I no longer believed in any gods. Comparing what we read in Genesis with what we were taught in the physics, biology, and earth science classes, it became clear that Genesis was laughably wrong. For example, in Genesis, we read that light was created before there was a source for that light, that plants were created before the sun, that there was a couple of trees that produced magical fruit, that snakes could talk, and that, for some unspecified reason, the Garden of Eden had angels armed with swords guarding the entrance to it. When I asked the teacher why God needed angels with swords to guard the entrance to the garden, I remember being told to write out I must never question God 100 times. The first indication I had that God was a vindictive, malicious SOB was when he decided to kill all the firstborn Egyptian children in Exodus. I learned about the escape of the Hebrews from Egypt, that you could part a vast expanse of the ocean by waving a stick at it while muttering a magical incantation, and that you could get water from a rock by hitting it, presumably with the same stick you used to part oceans, that food fell from the sky, and that Moses held a conversation with a burning bush. Laughing out loud at that story got me writing out I must never question God another 100 times. We were taught the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20. When I pointed out that Exodus 20 doesn't call them the 10 Commandments, but does call a different set in Exodus 34, the 10 Commandments, once again I had to write out 100 times I must never question God. It was questioning the 600+ commands in Leviticus that enabled me to hone my skills at writing out hundreds of times that I must never question God. I found many of the other stories littered throughout the Bible to be ridiculous, horrific, hateful, and immoral. I'm not going to go through those here, but we'll cover them in other videos. I've always been an avid reader, so reading the Bible was not a huge issue for me. Not laughing out loud and questioning the claims it and the teacher were making was a huge problem for me. I do not deny that the Bible is probably the most influential book ever written, but, unlike Richard Dawkins, I do not consider it to be fine literature. It is everything that fine literature isn't because it is inconsistent and self-contradictory. It is an immoral, poorly written childish fantasy written over a space of 1,600 years by semi-literate, pre-scientific warmongers who didn't even know what happened to the sun at night. The Evangelical Atheist channel is a channel where I explain why I think that holy books like the Bible get so much wrong. I also discuss other aspects of religion, such as its claim to be a source of morality. The Bible tells us that in the beginning was the Word, and that the Word was of God. However, we have no sound epistemic warrant to believe that claim. A far more reasonable answer is that the Bible was written by those desert-dwelling warmongering nomads I mentioned earlier. Why should we take their word for it? I can't think of a single reason why we should, but I can think of very many reasons why we shouldn't. Thousands of years ago, those people were attempting to explain the world in which they found themselves. I cannot criticize those people because they didn't have access to all the information available to a person in the 21st century, in the palm of their hands on their cell phones. Via a cell phone, you can access hundreds of years of scientific research that explains such things as how stars and planets form, what the cause of lightning is, how life evolves, etc. Among very many other things, science shows us why we shouldn't believe the creation stories in books like the Bible, why we can be certain that there was no global flood, and why we can find seashells at the tops of the highest mountains. Religion tells us that things are the way they are because that's how God wanted them. Unlike religion, science is a search for the truth. Religion claims to already have it. Religion provides answers but no explanations. Religion teaches people to be satisfied with an answer that does not explain. You can answer any question by saying God did it, but that tells you nothing about how God did it. Science provides answers and explanations, which makes science a far superior method of finding the truth about objective reality. If you are a seeker of truth, you will not find it in any religion.